Just a quick trigger warning. This episode does talk about mental health. If you or someone you know is struggling or in a crisis, help is available 24/7. Call or text 988 or chat 988lifeline.org.
Unrestricted, got the house now. We gon' turn it up.
This is AEW Unrestricted. I'm Will Washington, and she is the one and only Aubrey Edwards. How you doing today,
Hello.
Aubrey?
I'm doing good. I'm so excited for today. What do we got, Will?
Well, this is a very, very special episode of AEW Unrestricted. It is Mental Health Awareness Month, as a lot of you are aware. And talking about mental health awareness, I feel like that's something in professional wrestling that a lot of people don't talk enough about as far as the fan base is concerned. But it is something we are very conscious of behind the scenes in professional wrestling. And so we wanted to use this episode to really highlight our side of things, and specifically Team Psych here in AEW. And we're joined by three really special guests, and we're going to be joined by them throughout the show later on. We've got my dear friend Jimmy Nika. We've got Dr. David Reese, and joining us right now,
Drum roll.
We've got Chris Manzioni joining us right now.
Yay!
Chris,
Hi, guys.
thanks for being with us.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Oh man, I'm just so stoked that you agreed to do this, but more so stoked that I get to see you every week, even if I don't have a formal appointment scheduled with you. That's one of the things I like most about people in the mental health space that are really great, is just how approachable and wonderful they are. And I think you sort of embody that.
I appreciate that. That part of my job is not always necessarily sitting down with somebody, having a formal session. It's, hey, running into each other in catering or in the hallway and having a small 2 or 5 minute conversation that, maybe somebody says something that resonates, and you never know what's going to stick. So, every moment that we have is valuable, and I try to look at it that way.
Well, can you share some of the specific techniques or strategies you use to help wrestlers kind of manage things like pre-match nerves or anxiety?
Yeah, great question, Will. So it's not exactly, a list of things to do, right? We're coming at this from a foundational standpoint, right? So what I want to do is I want to help talent build self-efficacy, right? Do they believe that they can face the challenges that are ahead of them? Do they believe that they have enough to overcome those things, right? That leads toward confidence. If you have confidence, then it really doesn't matter what faces you in the future. You're going to be able to attack that head on. So it's not necessarily, hey, let's work on this one technique, right, that's going to help everybody. It really is tailored to the individual, and why it's so important that I have to get to know everybody and really build relationships, because, without that relationship, without trust, we can't have that conversational style and can't build those foundational aspects of being an elite performer.
So question I have is sort of more so for showing a little behind the scenes to our listeners, but you're on the road every week with us, and typically I think on Dynamite and Collision. So you're there all the time. So
Yeah.
if there was a question as far as how serious AEW takes mental health, it's no, we have someone on hand all the time, anytime you need it, on the road. And even when you're not on the road, you're accessible via text or email or whatever. So it's you are always there for people. And I know that your background, most people don't know this, but you previously worked with the Yankees, who is also a group of athletic performers who travel quite often. So is this sort of was this the natural jump of, hey, I'm already on the road every time working with elite athletes? Let's just jump into wrestling.
Yeah, Aubrey, great point. So and it really was a very natural transition for me. I spent 20 years with the New York Yankees working in the clubhouse when I was 22 years old, with Derek Jeter and Alex Rodriguez and Andy Pettitte, moving on to CC Sabathia and Mark Teixeira, and then on to, Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, and Garrett Cole. And, you're with these guys.
You were really with the eras.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I spent some time there. I
the
was very
dude's
lucky
legit.
to get 20 years in the big leagues is a rare feat, even, being in the clubhouse working with those guys. And I really got a firsthand taste of what it takes to be an elite performer. And not only that, but what it takes to stay there. And, part of that is a 162 game schedule, over 7 or 8 months, if you're lucky. Every day spending time with people. So for me, the wrestling schedule, hey, Dynamite on Wednesday and then Collision on Saturday, it was a natural flow for me of hey, I know how to do this. I'm pretty familiar with the culture. I'm pretty familiar with, the travel and what it takes to maintain, an elite level with all of these other things going on. So yeah, it was definitely a smoother transition for me than even I anticipated.
Hey, 2 shows a week. That's coming from the Yankees. That's I would say this is child's play.
It's a different kind, right? It's a different kind of stress, but
I don't
with the
know.
Yankees,
Baseball has an off season, okay? Like we're 52
Fair.
weeks a year.
Sure, yeah, 52 weeks a year, so we're still looking at 104 shows. But on the other side of that, you're like, well, it's 182 games, like in a much shorter amount of time. So, either way, hats off. I commend you for being able to jump over into the world of professional wrestling, and I think that's really cool.
Thanks, I appreciate it, and it's been a great transition. Coming over last August and really just kind of diving in feet first, and doing the work of getting to know everybody and connecting with people, and it's been an absolute blast. And the talent and coaches and front office staff, everyone has been so receptive that I didn't anticipate how quickly people would jump on board. A lot of times there can be a stigma attached with psychology, even sports psychology, right? The work that I'm doing is more the strength and conditioning of the psych world, right? Not necessarily the heavy work of, clinical stuff. So even with that, there's a stigma there. And I fully anticipated that it would take maybe almost a year for people to really start getting comfortable with me, but it happened almost immediately.
I love it. Well, I suppose a major question I wanted to throw out there then is the differences that you've noticed between the types of performers professional wrestlers are, and how you've had to adjust your strategies in that regard.
Great point, Will. So I will say, I thought the same thing coming in, right? Of like, okay, how am I going to tailor this to a really unique group of athletes, right? Where, hey, professional wrestling is just a different mix, right? Of there's a lot of other stuff that goes into than just the in-ring product. But what I discovered is, hey, look, at its core base, athletes are athletes, right? And there hasn't been, I will say there are more similarities than differences between professional baseball players and professional wrestlers.
Really? Huh. That's I wouldn't think that, because it's one of those things that's like, not only are we athletes, but we're also performers at the same time. So it's kind of approaching it from those two perspectives a little bit. I don't know. I don't know how much of a performer Jeter is, but I'm just assuming.
Well, I worked for the Yankees, but also I did other work outside of baseball as well. I worked with Broadway actors, and I've worked with country music stars. And so people that, that's why it's not necessarily sports psychology, it's performance psychology, right? Because you want to perform at whatever you're doing. And I just kept noticing a lot of similarities that, foundationally, whether you're playing a song in front of 60,000 people, or, trying to get a walk or a base hit in a big spot in the World Series, or, coming into all in the main event and, wanting to knock it out of the park, a lot of the foundational principles remain the same. And that was an interesting discovery for me. And it really helped me kind of put things into overdrive as I was able to jump in as people got comfortable with me. Then we were able to sit down and really, work on some stuff, which has been great.
So I'm kind of curious, because it's not just go to work every week and perform on TV and all these sort of things. There's also different stages of being a performer. There's the mental burnout. There's the rehabbing an injury. Like, are there different ways that you approach all of these different, I guess, states of being?
Yeah, 100%. Great question, Aubrey. Yes. So what I'm discovering is a lot of the work that I'm doing is with rehab and what we call return to play protocol, right? That our team medical has. And I'm really involved in that. And, when somebody gets hurt, that can be a really difficult mental struggle as much as physical struggle, right? And especially if you have a long period of time coming back, there are things that your mind plays tricks on you. You feel left out. Maybe some anxiety creeps in, right? Maybe a little bit of depression creeps in, of feeling like you're stuck and the world's passing you by, and the world of professional wrestling is passing you by. So I've been really involved in our talent that are rehabbing, in helping them develop their mindset and ensure that they have a positive outlook going forward, so that when they're ready to come back, they're ready to hit the ground running at 100%, not just physically, but also mentally.
And so also just talking about, the aspect of being able to come back and things like that, and talking about being on the road as much as we are. How do you manage? And this kind of goes across the board because you've been managing it all forever. But how do you manage things like burnout? How do you manage things like the fatigue of it all? Because at the end of the day, we're performing, or our stars are performing for, 100 weeks, or sorry, not 100 weeks, but 100 shows per year. Yes, there's only 52 weeks in a year, but 100 shows per year. And so just thinking about how much and how much of a toll that can take, and how much having to maintain things like being over with the crowd and whatnot. How do you help the talent manage that kind of fatigue?
Yeah. So, when we're talking about managing fatigue, right, first step is self-awareness, being aware of what's going on physically and mentally, noticing things, right? Like, wow, I'm having a different attitude coming to work today than I normally have, or my routine isn't helping me the same way that it's helped me in the past. What's going on here, right? So,
but for those not watching the video, and I'm like pointing at myself because this is specifically something that you and I have talked about in our meetings.
Yes. Absolutely. Right. Are you working for your routine, or is your routine working for you? And acknowledging that and finding where the line is that first step. And then once you acknowledge, hey, I think I'm experiencing some burnout, then it's all right. What do we have to do to recenter yourself, bring you back to, where you're comfortable being your best, right? And it's coming back to your values, coming back to your principles, coming back to your goals, and recentering yourself there. Which, again, depending on the person, there's a lot of different ways to get there, right? It's very much independent of who you're talking to. And finding those things and reconnecting with that a lot of times can be what helps you get through that. And look, burnout's burnout, right? So sometimes you just need a break. And sometimes, the recommendation is, hey, I just need a couple of weeks off, or I need to take a step back, because the physical part of it is real as well. So it's just a matter of, being aware of it and then having the courage to take action on that.
It's oh man, I just love your mindset and how you approach all of this. So as we're sort of wrapping up here, what advice do you have for aspiring wrestlers who sort of want to develop that mental resilience and psychological skills for success in this industry?
Oof, good question. So I'm biased, but my first piece of advice would be go find somebody who works in my field. Go find a mental performance coach. Go talk to somebody and let them help you, right? When we want to get physically fit, you can go get a personal trainer and they're going to help you get physically ready to go, right? On the mental side, go find a mental performance coach. They're going to help you get better, right? And sometimes hearing something from the outside, hearing it from somebody else who's trained in this field, something will just click, right? Or you'll hear something that you hadn't considered before, and that can really help you take the next step.
Chris, thanks for being here with us. This has been a pleasure and a genuinely eye-opening conversation for me. And I think I know AEW talent listens to this podcast, and anybody who is listening to this, definitely take advantage of all of the tools that are available to you in AEW. And for any of the fans listening, I hope this conversation here gave you some better insight as to things that are happening in our company. We've still got so much more to come. But seriously, Chris, thank you for being here.
Yeah, Will, Aubrey, thank you so much for having me. It's awesome. I love being able to talk about this stuff, and I'm so happy that you guys are, honoring Mental Health Awareness Month and putting this out there for everyone. It's been great.
Thank you.
It's so awesome. Thank you for chatting with us today. We've got more coming up on Unrestricted. We've got more members of Team Psych we want to highlight during Mental Health Awareness Month coming up.
Unrestricted.
AEW Unrestricted. We're back. It's Aubrey and Will, and this Mental Health Awareness Month edition of AEW Unrestricted continues with AEW's Team Psych, and we couldn't have Team Psych without a dear friend of mine, actually, and a friend that actually goes back before AEW, and it was funny because we started around the same time, and it was like this kind of race between the two of us to see who was gonna get their offer first, and. So that this was like conversation that was taking place all throughout. It's actually been about a year, right? Because I got my offer April 20th of last year.
You beat me. The answer is you beat me.
Yeah.
I got my final offer on the 28th, which is this weekend, Sunday.
Yeah. Well, it's Jiminica Eborn. And yeah, I remember all of those conversations taking place, and it was around the same time. So we've both been in AEW about a year. You've been a part of Team Psych for about a year. But Jim, give us a little background on what you do in AEW and what you do in general.
Whew, okay, let's do a full rounded thing. Hello everyone. My background has been mental health in all capacities. I started studying psychology at the age of 16 because I always tell folks, and I like to be honest, and I think as practitioners, there is a balance of like showing who you are and like also keeping a bay. I like to be upfront. I am a child of trauma, which led me into working in trauma. Outside of AEW, I predominantly do a lot of work with sexual assault survivors under my own company. I teach, I write, I speak, I do tons of educational things. I have a nonprofit for sexual assault survivors. I co-own an intimacy coordination company called Cintima, where we train intimacy coordinators predominantly online. I work in true crime with my friend Lenora, where we support stalking survivors, which is wild. And I work at AEW, which is where I always say, out of Team Psych, I get to do like the real things that people get nervous about. I'm like, if you think we can't handle it, I'm that person. So I like to focus on sex, relationships, body things, anger, communication, finding balance between life and work, kind of like being able to take a breather, getting into your body, those kind of fun things. So you might see me in the back throwing ice with someone. You might see me running back and forth, trying to sit on floors. I have a bag of fidget toys that I pass out every time I'm on site. I'm kind of just all over, and I think that's fun for me.
It's so awesome. Like every time I get to see you at work, I'm just like, oh, here's one of my favorite people. She's here. Oh my God. So it's funny because as you say, like the balance of things, like immediately I think about social media because it's this awesome thing as far as like promoting who you are and all the things that you care about, but it's also an awful thing because of all the things we know about social media. So and I know that one of the things that's great about you is you make yourself so visible on social media and you talk about these things that are so important to you in all of the different things that you do. How do you help kind of our talent navigate the negative and the psychological impact of social media on your mental well-being?
Yeah, honestly, it's one of my favorite things. And I said out loud, people like, that sounds easier than it is, Jim. And I said, I know. But reality testing, I think that there's the idea of, is this real? In Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, none of that is real. And there's a lot of parasocial relationships that happen for folks and folks that don't know what that means. There's people on the internet that will see you and be like, we're best friends. I love this person. I will ride and die. And you see literally violence and threats online.
Yeah, a lot of professional wrestling fandom is built on parasocial relationships.
Absolutely.
It's something that I've really been struggling to grasp over the last, especially year of seeing it transpire. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's totally fine. I think there's the reminder of that isn't real. And so these people's thoughts, I will ask folks questions. Does their thoughts matter? And their response is like, well, they're fans. And I'm like, but this is one person on the internet. Does that person matter? You're upset because they don't like the way you did a 450 splash. Will they ever do one in life? No. Are they ever going to be in your job? No. Are you the one with the contract and are amazing and are doing this work? Yes. Also, let's get off the internet for a little bit. And so I think there's the reminder of like, we need the internet for promotion and all of these things, but also like wrestlers are characters. Leave that there. Go focus and do real life things. Go outside, drink some tea. When's the last time you took a deep breath? Because we're all walking around holding our breath. Like, I like to get back into like the reality of things and go, it doesn't matter. Of course, folks will spiral and go back and forth and be like, well, Jim, this is the thing. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. It's okay. Like you are allowed to leave that at home. And I think there's also the reminder of you are not your job 24/7.
God damn.
That's such a tough one.
Sure.
Well, I want to talk about, let's kind of stay on the topic of self-care, right? Because that's really I think in general, what a lot of people kind of struggle with, because we do feel like we are our job 24/7. And especially in a professional wrestling role where it never really turns off, right? Like, you know, we have our shows Wednesday, we have our show Friday, we have our show Saturday, and we have Ring of Honor on Thursdays. And so we have like shows constantly running, but then we constantly have people talking about it and talking to us about it. And we're constantly planning. And so what are some of the tools that that you kind of coach people with as far as getting them to employ in their own lives to make sure that they can disconnect at some point in this 24/7 world that is professional wrestling?
I love this question. So I think if we look at it, the idea of self-care is what people know so often, and I'll talk about it. But there's also the idea of self-soothing. And so you need both of them to be a full human. So let me talk through self-care. It's not just going to the spa and getting massages, although that's really important for some people like myself. It's, did you take your medication? How many hours have you slept? Have you been outside? Have you spent time with someone that just genuinely loves you? Like, those are the things. So self-care is the things that keep us afloat. Did you eat today? Like, are we on a meal plan? Do we need to check in? Do you need to cry? Like, these are the things that I find are like self-care. And they're not bad things. And they don't also have to be like super grandeur. If you're like, let's go to the spa, cool. But also, like, did you need to like stretch? Do you need to like go lift some weights or do something? And then there's the self-soothing aspect, which is how I became a wrestling fan, I think, at the age of 9, is like the things that allow our brains to just shut off. And it's like, for some folks, as we know, people walking around with video games in the back. They're listening to music. They're just like sitting with their friend and catching up. That can be self-soothing because you are just existing. Sometimes we don't need to be active. Sometimes the hardest part is just sitting still and being quiet for a little bit. And so finding the balance of all of those things can be tricky. One of the questions I like to ask folks, and they always go, what? What brings you joy?
Yep.
Like, it's not a hard question, but because we all get so wrapped up in just existing and making it, when I ask what brings people joy, they go, I don't remember, or I don't know, or I just focus on my family. And so often I'm like, well, let's figure out what brings you joy. Let's go through some things. When's the last time you laughed? When's the last time you smiled? When's the last time you like laughed till you like cried and your belly ached? And so I'll start kind of navigating and asking those questions. I'm like, I know it seems like I'm just trying to be in your business, which I might be. And then they'll laugh. But also, Aubrey knows this. I said this when I did the Heels call. If you're laughing, you're breathing. If you're breathing, you're present. So oftentimes when I work with folks, I am also ensuring that there is laughter, because that way I know that we are aware. And also it lets your guard down a little bit. You're not going to be mad at me while you're laughing, unless you're, special. But for the most part, like, it allows you to exist, to go, okay, now I can think about these things. And so I think there's just finding your balance and knowing that you're allowed to like opt in and opt out of things. And that just because it works for Aubrey, it doesn't work for Will. You can share information and go, this doesn't work. And anytime anyone works with me, I always say, I'm going to give you a bunch of stuff. I love a follow-up email so people don't feel overwhelmed. I'm like, I'll send you things. Take what works for you and leave the rest. Don't feel overwhelmed to try and do everything, because it might not be for you. And I think that also allows folks to go, oh yeah, I also get to choose what works for me. Like, oh yeah, I have choice. I get to consent to things. So then it's like my expansion into teaching them other tools by just focusing on the self-care and the self-soothing. It's a trick, yeah.
Yeah, I love how you approach this with humor, because that's so absolutely true. Like, mental health is such a heavy thing. And oftentimes we do talk about heavy stuff that's happening in our lives or has happened. Like you mentioned, trauma and all this sort of stuff, but it just becomes so much easier to talk about it when you're laughing. And that's always one of the things that I appreciate chatting with you, because oftentimes, even if we have like a 5-minute conversation, I'm going to end up laughing.
Sure.
And
I gotta make sure you're there.
Right. And the laughing as breathing thing is so smart. I love it. So you had mentioned a little bit when we started talking, sort of like your approach to mental health and the things that you like to focus on when looking at all of our AEW talent, but how do you collaborate with the other members of Team Psych and with, coaches, trainers, all that sort of stuff. How do you come in to help sort of the holistic approach of talent development?
Yeah, I mean, I'm constantly in conversation with Dr. Reese. I always say Dr. Reese is like my partner in crime, which is very interesting that my partner is a 72-year-old little man, which just makes sense for my future, apparently. And so we are constantly navigating what tools are you giving them, and did it work? If it didn't work, let me go into my bag and offer something else. And then when I see Chris, like, we go back and forth, like, well, what were you, who are you saying? Do you think I need to follow up with them? And I think the cool part is that I work with a team of folks that understands what I do and who I am, which is very helpful. And so they can go, I think you should go talk to Jim. That might be a better fit for you. And I think the honesty of this work is really good. Like, I don't work with folks that are trying to just counsel everyone, because fun fact, it's hard. Like, you might see Team Psych walking around smiling and doing everything, but also knowing we have jobs outside of this as well. And so we also have to maintain our mental health. So I think being honest in not necessarily like a world that's always so honest, right? Being honest and being true, I think, has been very helpful to be able to work in this aspect of AEW. And just allowing folks to see that we are humanistic, that we aren't just robots. We aren't just making things up and throwing it at people. I'm like, oftentimes you will never see me in like an AEW mental health shirt. That's just not who I am. And so, which also allows for confusion. But I think meeting people where they are has allowed us to be very engaged with individuals. Now, do I have to stop people and wrangle them? Like, hi, I have worked here a year. Have we met? We haven't met. Okay, let's have this conversation. But Team Psych in general, we are on the phone all the time. We are texting. Like, you're on a walk? Let's talk while you're on a walk. You're in your car? Let's talk while you're in your car. What are you reading? And also sharing information of like updated things in the world. As mental health is evolving, I think it's also important for us to know what's happening so we can share that information. There's a lot of folks that are anti-psych support, and I know it, and I see you avoiding me. But I think it's also because there's such a stigma around it, right? There's a stigma specifically in wrestling where if you tell me something's going on, I'm going to go tell TK and you're going to be out of a job. And I always like to note that that is untrue, especially in AEW. We don't report to anybody outside of us unless it is we need to get you a higher level of care support, or if Doc Sampson needs to know something. And even sharing information, if we don't need to tell the other person like big things, we don't. We want it to be very safe and secure for you as well. And so that's the reminder. Whatever you tell us, we keep it in-house. We're not telling the other wrestlers. We're not going in the locker rooms like, announcement. Let me tell you what Aubrey told me today. Like, it's not real, right? And so those are answering your question in long form. Those are kind of some of the things that I do.
Jim, this was such again, I always recommend to people, literally, you've been witness to it, where I was sitting there having a conversation and somebody's really breaking down, and you had just happened to be walking by, and I was like, who this is really the right conversation for? And I pulled you right in, and I walked by. You're
like, hey, bye.
Yeah, no, and I walked by like an hour and a half later, and you guys were still talking, and I was like, this is exactly it. This was exactly what I want to see more of. And it's so great to see that in our company, and I just love having you around. It's always exciting when I know you're going to be at TV or a pay-per-view or anything to that effect. And it was great even knowing you beforehand. And either way, thank you for being here on Unrestricted.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
God, this was so great. Oh, man. We've got one more guest from Team Psych coming up. Jiminica kind of mentioned a little bit Dr. Reese. I'm super excited. I'm so happy we get to promote all of our members of Team Psych here. Mental Health Awareness Month. Stay tuned. AEW Unrestricted. AEW Unrestricted. It is Mental Health Awareness Month. Aubrey and Will are chatting with all of the members of Team Psych because AEW really values mental health. And I'm so stoked today to have Dr. David Reese as a part of this conversation. And Dr. Reese, I've worked with you on multiple occasions, and I believe you are our first member of Team Psych to join AEW. Is that correct?
I think I was the first person approached, yes.
Yeah, because I remember talking to Doc Sampson initially, like, hey, we should really get some people involved in this because it's not just, we've talked about it a little bit already. Like, it's not the physical aspects of, the job, but also the mental aspects. So talk about sort of how you had come into AEW and what were sort of the focuses that you wanted to, really drive home when building sort of Team Psych from the ground up.
My background, I've been around the wrestling industry for about 20 years, but I've done sports medicine since medical school. Like I say, I'm not an athlete. I have no talent myself, but I've always been on the outskirts of it. And also it's been over 15 years now. I've done a lot of work on the East Coast. I was back and forth before the pandemic, and I connected with Chris Nowinski and the Concussion Institute, and I did a lot of pro bono work for them as an advisor. And then I got a call, I think it was October of 21, from Chris saying, hey, AEW is thinking of having a shrink on staff. Are you interested? Hey, that sounds neat to me. So we started actually on a case-by-case basis just to see. We had no idea what to expect in terms of volume or types of issues or what. And then I formally came on as a staff member January of 2022. And I'm still here as far as I know. But, my focus has been a bit more clinical. And obviously I come from a different demographic, a different background. My strengths are different than Jim's strengths, and I make no bones about it. And my demographics are obviously different. I make no bones about that. But, basically we started just on the sense of what do people need and what can we do to help them? And it was unclear whether it would be more of an EAP model of, see me 2 or 3 times, then use your insurance, or continuing therapy. But it turned out people like to talk to someone who understands the business, who can connect. So right now I'm just working with people for whatever they need, whether it be counseling, whether it be more depth therapy, judiciously medication at times. Jim is better than I am at some of the behavioral immediate stuff, so that I definitely refer people. We work together on that. We refer people to each other. And I'm a little bit more formal and a lot older. And so I sort of keep a little bit more in the background. And actually, I had been on social media. I know you brought that up until Twitter became X or Y or Z, whatever it is. And I said goodbye. And I had like 30,000.
Just a great call.
Good. Just good.
I had like 30,000 followers, which isn't bad for an old shrink. But I just said, I don't need that. So now I'm very limited in terms of that type of issue. But I'm well aware of the toxicity of that, and we're dealing with that all the time. So we're dealing with acute issues. I deal a lot with also post-injury issues, chronic pain, concussions. But we also deal with just life, relationships, developmental issues, family issues, whatever people want to come to and talk about, we're here to work with it. And at times it goes into clinical anxiety, depression, PTSD. At times it's more general, but it's basically whatever. And I just want to reinforce what I know Jim said is what we do is totally confidential. If there's something medical that Doc Sampson needs to know about, we communicate on that, obviously. But otherwise, no one in AEW knows who I see or what I talk about. All I send is the number of sessions that I've had in a month, but not who or what or why.
So I wanted to ask you about, you talked about the clinical side of things. Can you kind of give our fans a little bit of some insight as to the psychological impact that pain and physical injury can have on mental health?
It's complex. And, obviously just in general, it causes stress and discomfort. You also get into issues of job security. You get, how is this going to affect my future? And we're basically dealing with people who are in chronic pain. One of the things I ask people is, when was the last day you woke up and you weren't in pain? And the typical answer I get is, it was sometime in high school. So, and you add to that concussion issues, interpersonal issues, everything else. And you're juggling all of these different issues at the same time. And obviously some people have a history of anxiety or depression or different types of issues that they bring to them. And sometimes being in the industry is a way of working through those issues, sometimes in a good way, sometimes in not such a good way. And we try to say, okay, how can we make this work that's best for you? And just sort of adding to some of what Jim talked about in terms of self-care, one of the things that I focus on, which is sort of the same but a little bit different, is self-compassion, and particularly compassion for what we went through as kids and what we went through as young adults. And the other thing I deal with people a lot is, you always, what people tell me, it's not my experience, is you went through years waiting to make it to this point, expecting that this would be Shangri-La. Mm-hmm. And now it turns out there's a whole bunch of stress that goes along with success. And success is not easy, and it's more difficult to handle, and you don't have as much control. It's not like in the indies where you could just say, oh, I'm not going to take any dates for a couple of weeks. So it gets very complex, and we're often dealing with multiple issues at once.
Wow. Yeah, it's. I think people forget about that fact that there's the physical pain aspect to it, right? Because we see wrestling as a performance a lot of times, but like I woke up today like in incredible amount of pain. I popped a rib out in just the most recent show, and it's like the things you don't really think about and how that sort of plays into it. So talk about sort of the psychological impact when we're going through all of this sort of physical pain.
Right. And it's the physical pain that not me, but that people are experiencing, but it's also coworkers, peers, friends. I mean, this isn't MMA, this isn't boxing. You're not trying to take the head off the person you're working with. You're trying to work with them. So there are also issues of responsibility, of guilt, of maintaining relationships that are really unique to this form of sports. And is it sports? Obviously, it's sports. I mean, sure, maybe the win-loss record isn't what counts like in baseball, but obviously it's a very high-risk sport. And like I tell people, it's a damn difficult job. It's not easy. It's difficult. It's difficult physically. It's difficult mentally. It's difficult travel-wise. And a lot of times, as I say, people, well, I've made it, so things should be easy. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
Well, one of the things that seems to be kind of a common theme throughout this episode is kind of talking about people needing to seek out the help of Team Psych and whatnot. And so one of the things I've genuinely been curious about is when you have talent that's not necessarily taking advantage of the tools that are available to them, the tools that are at their disposal in AEW or in professional wrestling in general. How do you personally know what signs to look for? And how do you go about encouraging somebody to take those steps?
It's not easy. I've been involved in the industry and in sports in general long enough that I remember the days where if you mentioned mental health, your place on the roster dropped, or you were fired, or you were ignored, whether that be baseball or football or wrestling. And the stigma was very real. When I first started giving some talks for Cauliflower Alley Club, they were very concerned that talking about mental health would be negative or open them up to some type of litigation or lawsuit. I mean, now that's changed. It's been 15 some odd years, but that's where we started. And it's not totally gone. I mean, I think AEW does an excellent job, in terms of providing care. In terms of communication, that's still difficult. It would be nice if people read emails, but that doesn't happen all that often. And again, using humor is part of it. And we need to do a better job. We're actually trying to put together some more outreach, such as just connecting with anyone who's had an injury or anyone who's out for personal reasons, family reasons. Not to say they need therapy or need treatment or have a mental health issue, but just, hey, we're here. Do you want to chat? Even if it's an informal chat. Are you having issues with people you're working with? Do you want to come in and just like a couple of us just informally chat, not in terms of group therapy or anything? So we need to do better with some of that, and we have some ideas how we can. But if you look, this all started less than 3 years ago, so I think we're in a pretty good place for where we started, but there's definitely room for improvement.
One of the things that I absolutely love is as talent is having these positive experiences with Team Psych, everyone's sort of talking about, hey, you should go talk to this person. You should go talk to this person. Like, I've literally had conversations in the locker room with other people saying, dude, you have not talked to Dr. Reese yet? Like, please go. Like, it's a huge benefit. Like, he understands wrestling. Like, I don't think people understand how big of a deal that is. Like, I've been to mental health professionals and I try to describe a little bit of what I do at work, and it goes over their head and they just don't get it. And the first time we chatted, I was like, hey, I want to talk about this particular instance that happened. And you're like, oh yeah, no, I saw it. And I'm like, oh, we just cut out like 30-minute discussion. This is great.
Right.
And we got down to like the root of the issue, and it was awesome. And I appreciate it so much. One of the things that Jim sort of talked about in our last segment was how Team Psych works together. Because you all have different backgrounds, you all have different demographics. Like Chris is on the road all the time. Sort of you and Jim are available at different moments. Like everyone's available outside of work. How do you sort of fit into the makeup of Team Psych?
I work mostly remotely. That's what I've been doing since the pandemic. I like to be on site now and then, but it's just not my personality to be I'm not Jim. I don't pretend to be, and we need that, but that's not my thing. So I show up a couple times a year, usually at the major pay-per-view. I'll be in Vegas, so people know I'm not an avatar. But basically, I work remotely and having sessions, and because I'm aware of the schedule of AEW, and my schedule's more limited these days, I can be available. Well, I'm on the West Coast, so I can be available evenings for people on the East Coast. I can be available weekends. So it works pretty well that way. In terms of referrals, most of the people who come to me, as you say, are, hey, so-and-so told me, you're not that scary.
Yes.
No, I'm not that scary. I mean, the only time I've been in a ring is to make an announcement. And luckily I didn't get pile driven.
There you go.
But I've been around the industry. You don't need to explain terms to me. You don't need to explain to me how it works. But I make no pretense that I know what it's like to actually be in there competing. I don't pretend to. At heart, I'm a mark, but I understand what's going on, and we don't have to spend time. Oh yeah, what do you really mean by that? Well, I don't get that. Yeah, I mean, I think I get it pretty much, and I'm not afraid to ask when I don't get it. And I actually have a couple of people who I know from outside the industry. Some of them retired, some still active in the indies, who I'll turn to at times when, like, hey, explain this to me, explain that to me, so that I have a better idea of what it's really like, not having been there myself.
It's like a continuing education, but for wrestling.
It's
like, hey, so let's talk about this kind of thing. Like, what's happening in the industry nowadays?
Yeah. And, I've had contact with the indies. I've never worked for WWE. I know a lot of the people there, but I try to keep up with what's going on and not in the industry in general, as well as just the storylines, the interactions, just to have an understanding of what's happening. I wish I could say I get to watch every show. I can't, but I try to.
I can't even watch every show, so there you go.
Well, I have to watch every show, so
that's true. That's part of your job.
Well, one of the last things I wanted to ask you. You used standard psychology. You used a standard psychology test and gave it to a couple of wrestlers, and you had them take it as themselves, as a heel, and as a babyface. And I kind of want to talk about the results of this, because this is, again, something that really somebody only who understands professional wrestling would even attempt or think to do. And so kind of talk about the results of that.
Yeah, that's interesting you bring that up. That was, that was about 10 years ago that I did that, and it was with cauliflower, Alley Club. And I just thought of that. I thought, let me see what would happen if I administered psych testing and just a standard MCMI, we call it. And I said, take it as yourself, take it with the mindset of your favorite baby face, and take it with your mindset of your favorite heel. Theoretically, the one taken as yourself should have come back as accurate, and the ones taken as somebody else should have come back as inaccurate, as not reliable. But these people are so good at what they do, all three came back reliable, which was because then we were able to integrate both on a psychological level. Okay, where is this coming from? Are there issues you have from your past that can contribute to you being able to do this, but maybe have a negative effect in other ways? And that's where I do some of the deeper psychological work. But also what I was doing at that time was to help people develop, well, where would you be best? And obviously things fluctuate and people make turns and swerves. But where is your strength? Is it being the face? Is it being the heel? And it was very interesting. I haven't done that recently because right now I'm working more clinically. But it totally shocked me when it threw out all of the theory and all three results came back as accurate.
Oh my God, that's hilarious and wonderful, and I kind of want to do it myself.
Be glad to.
Oh my God, yeah, I might be giving you a text after this just to say like, hey, let's set that up. Let's see what happens. Oh my God, thank you so much for meeting with us today, Dr. Reese. This was so great.
Just to add one other thing real quickly.
Sure.
I do deal with medications very conservatively, and there I do coordinate with Doc Sampson when need be. But there's a place for that. Obviously you don't want to use anything that's going to interfere with performance or anything else, and we have to be careful. But that's something that I do offer very cautiously, very judiciously, whether someone's been on meds in the past. And I'll say one more thing. Most athletes hate antidepressants because they make you too flat. So a lot of times I'm thinking out of the box and doing things that may not be standard psychiatry, but if they work, they work. And I'm not going to knock success.
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yeah.
If it's safe and it works, that's what we're aiming for.
I just love that we were able to have all three of you on today to talk about kind of the different aspects and the different approach to mental health when it comes to athletes, performers, people who basically exist on the road, and then all of the aspects of that, like the outside life, the dealing with work, the dealing with success, all dealing with injury. Like, this was such an insightful conversation, and I'm so happy we had all of you on today.
I'm very glad to at any time. And actually, seriously, the more publicity we can get within the company, the better, the more that people know I'm here.
Right.
And particularly, like I came on before ROH was part of it. So some of those people, I think I'm one of the boys or something. But seriously, the more outreach, the more connection, the better.
Absolutely.
I love it. Thank you, Dr. Reese, for being here. And thank you all for joining us here on AEW Unrestricted. You can catch new episodes of AEW Unrestricted every Thursday on your favorite podcast platform. We've got video episodes available every Monday on our YouTube channel. AEW Dynamite airs every Wednesday at 8 p.m. We've got on TBS, by the way. We've got TBS. AEW Rampage on TNT every Friday. We've got AEW Collision every Saturday on TNT. And of course, Ring of Honor is available on watchroh.com on Honor Club every Thursday. Thank you all for being a part of this special episode of AEW Unrestricted. This was a phenomenal listen.
Yes.
It was very informative for me, and I hope you got as much out of this as I did. I'm Will Washington. That's Aubrey Edwards. We'll see you next time. Have a great day. Peace.
As a reminder, if you or someone you know is struggling or in a crisis, help is available 24/7. Call or text 988 or chat 988lifeline.org.